This is going to be a journey of spectacular scenery, feats of amazing human engineering, and myths and legends all added to the mix. But the thing that excites me most are the natural forces that conspire to create the Highlands of Scotland. My name is Kevin Elgello, and this is the Great Glen Way. It's a story that literally divided and connected the Highlands of Scotland. This whole route is steeped in history, from the Iron Age to the Picts and to the Industrial Revolution, epitomised by the works of Thomas Telford. This whole area is also connected with the heroic achievements to defeat the Nazis in World War II. But actually, these human accomplishments are a byproduct of something much, much bigger. This is a story of how this landscape came to be, and the peoples that lived upon it are deeply connected to the Great Glen geological fault.
My journey started in the town of Fort William, the outdoor capital of the UK. The last time I was here, I'd just completed the West Highland Way, a film which is also available on my channel, so do check that one out also. So doing the Great Glen Way just seemed right. Like all journeys, the start can be the most memorable, and the Great Glen Way is no exception at the site of the original Fort William. Although in the 21st century it's surrounded by a McDonald's and a supermarket, it seems only right to start your journey northeast from here. The old fort was a strategic stronghold built around 1690 and later fortified by General Wade in 1725 as part of the English suppression of the Highlanders. It was named Fort William, as was the town, after King William III. The fort gained notoriety for its role in the infamous Glencoe massacre of 1692, where members of the MacDonald clan were murdered as they slept by troops of the Clan Campbell under orders from the English government. The fort also played its part for those travelling to the Americas as part of the Highland clearances, displacing people for the sake of agriculture, mainly sheep farming. If you're watching this film in the US and you have Scottish ancestors, no doubt they may have left from here.
It always makes me laugh when you start a long distance walk by McDonald's and a supermarket, but it is what it is. Most great walks will have to start somewhere, and a lot of them inevitably will start off in a town. But I'm so excited to be on the trail again. It's been, well, virtually almost a year shy of a month since I last did the West Highland Way, so I'm so excited to be getting and heading north along the Great Glen Way.
The Great Glen Way is significantly easier than the extremely popular West Highland Way. It's a couple of days shorter, and on the whole the terrain is much easier going and indeed flatter. So my plans are to use this to my advantage, allowing me to take some detours off route.
This is disappointing. I've just come off route to Inverlochy Castle, and it's closed, physically closed. They're doing some kind of restoration, so I can literally get in through this gate almost get up to the ramparts. And as I turn about, it's closed. But if you were doing the Great Glen in a future date, hopefully this restoration work will be complete, and it's definitely worth a few hundred metres just off the track to come and see this amazing castle.
Inverlochy Castle was built around 1270 to 1280 by John the Black Comyn, chief of the clan Comyn. Archaeologists believe the castle was constructed upon an earlier Pictish fortification and settlement, and is said to have been sacked by Viking invaders. When Robert the Bruce succeeded to the Scottish throne in 1306, he swiftly captured, then burnt the castle to the ground. The ruins were left unoccupied for quite some time until a royal visit from Queen Victoria in 1873 saw some restoration work undertaken.
It's disappointing that I couldn't get in, but it is what it is. There's nothing we could do. But what it proves is that it really does invest to just come off the main Great Glen Way. Just see what else there is around you. Otherwise, things like this could be so easily missed. And that's really what the spirit of this particular adventure will be. Just stepping off the trail and seeing what things we can find. Even if they are closed, it's still worth the adventure.
With Inverlochy Castle behind me, I now headed over the Soldiers' Bridge towards the small town of Corpath, and an unusual surprise.
There's simply nothing like walking along a shoreline. The sound of the water, the smell of the sea, the sound of pebbles beneath your feet. But then, of course, on the Great Glen Way, you have this. A shipwreck. This is the MV Dayspring, motor vessel Dayspring, built in 1975, and she mostly fished herring and mackerel in and around Loch Lochy and beyond. Now, on the 8th of December 2011, she was moored just across the bay in Cumnasagal, and there was a terrible storm, and she was literally ripped from her anchor and pushed across the bay and became marooned as the ship you see beside me. Obviously there was much debate when this happened, and the local council decided that actually they're going to leave her there, and she's become this kind of macabre tourist attraction, something you don't often expect to see on the trail, and certainly by a loch. But nonetheless, it is quite a spectacular and awe-inspiring thing. So if you do come just slightly off the path, literally 10-20 meters, you can check out the MV Dayspring.
The Dayspring is the smallest of detours off the route, but looking around does add a bit of time to your day. However, that's the beauty of adding a few extra days to walk the Great Glen Way. It's about the journey rather than the destination.
Well, this is it. This is it. This is the Caledonian Canal, built by the world famous British engineer Thomas Telford. Now, I'm not going to be spending the next sort of 10 minutes reeling off reams of information about Thomas Telford. Now, obviously I've read up a lot about this journey before I started, but I'm going to spread out the information as I go, because basically this whole Great Glen Way uses the Caledonian Canal, or travels along the Caledonian Canal, and Thomas Telford was a very clever chappie. He actually made use of 3 natural lochs, and we'll be talking about more about that as I travel. But let's just head on, and it's now really official. This is really now the Great Glen Way. It's just north and north and north to Inverness. Now, Thomas Telford, he was a clever chappie. He had some serious challenges when he constructed the Caledonian Canal. And like I said, he did take advantage of 3 natural lochs, but nonetheless, the Caledonian Canal isn't flat. It's not like building a canal in the Netherlands where everything is clinically flat. Oh no, Thomas Telford had to deal with a gradient, and this was his first challenge, constructing Neptune's staircase.
Neptune's staircase was engineered by Scotsman Thomas Telford. He is no doubt one of the most celebrated civil engineers in British history. Born in 1757, he even has a town named after him, Telford in Shropshire. He played such a significant role in British engineering that when he passed away in 1830, the ceremony was held at Westminster Abbey, where a statue celebrating his life still stands today. Neptune's staircase was built around 1811. It's the longest staircase lock in Britain, lifting boats over 20 metres over a series of 8 individual lock gates, taking about 90 minutes for a boat to pass through the system. In 1822, the canal was finished. It had taken over 12 years to build at a cost of around £910,000, and in today's money, that's approaching nearly £150 billion.
I've just been thinking. I've been walking for a good hour now since Neptune's staircase, and I've been walking by the canal, and you have to remember this fact. This canal was dug by men, not by machines, by brute force, by shovel, pick and barrow. I just can't imagine the volume of tons of rock and sand and mud and peat and whatever that they had to remove. The physical toil that it took to construct this canal.
Collectively, by hand, over 4 million cubic metres of rock and stone alone was removed. That's like slicing 50 metres off the top of Scotland's highest mountain, Ben Nevis.
So the light is drawing in. It's approaching 6 o'clock. It's been a nice but long day. A little bit slower progress than I would have liked to make, but if you're making a film, and that's what I'm doing, as you know, it takes time. But nonetheless, it's been a lovely day, and I'm literally 100 metres from Moy Swing Bridge. It's the oldest surviving bridge on the Caledonian Canal, and if memory serves, it dates back to 1812. It's original cast iron, and probably the only reason why it has survived is because it has very, very little traffic, probably crossing from one farm to the other. So it's still hopefully going strong. It is a beautiful, peaceful place to be. Moy Swing Bridge is also going to be my home for the night. I was going to go that little bit further, but I've probably got really an hour of navigable effective light, perhaps a bit more, but obviously I'm going to have to film. And tomorrow I want to go to Commando Monument, which is about a couple of miles off route. It's a place with significant importance to some friends of mine, and I just want to go there. But tonight this is going to be my campsite. Respectful camping is allowed on most places on the Great Glen Way, provided of course you leave no trace, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just enjoy Moy Swing Bridge. Welcome to Inverlochy Bottom Loch. It's a really nice morning. It's a little bit damp, a little bit drizzly, but it's really, really nice. And I'm taking good advantage of this wooden picnic bench so I can have my second cup of coffee. But I actually thought it would also be a really good opportunity just to talk a little bit about mapping and guiding along the Great Glen Way. So what I brought with me on this particular trip is two things. Let me just show you. The first thing that I could mention is that I'm using a paper book from a publisher called Cicerone Press. It's a little bit heavy. It is also available on my mobile phone, but of course that will use my battery. but I really do love hiking with a guidebook. I never used to, I must confess. But what I actually find is that when you've got your guidebook, you can understand the world around you. You can just wreak a little bit of information about the places that you're walking past, and it just gives you an extra dimension to a walk. So I love taking a guidebook. They didn't give it to me, I bought both of these, but I just wanted to mention to you my personal feelings about hiking with some kind of reference. And I suppose the other reference that I've got with me is a paper map. And this is actually waterproof paper, and it's made by a company called Footprint. Now, I love maps. I have a real map fetish. And one of the big questions that you could ask is, do you actually need it though on the Great Glen Way? It's extremely easy to navigate your journey. However, I would always say that taking a paper map is an essential piece of kit. Primarily, you understand where you are and where you're going, but more importantly, you understand your resupply points, and more importantly, in fact, essentially, you can understand your escape routes should there be a problem. So I would always advocate hiking with a map.
It was here at Inverlochy that I took my first big detour off the route to Commando Memorial.
This is a long walk off of the Great Glen. It's 2 miles. 2 miles from my original route, and then of course I'll have to do 2 miles coming back, but I really want to go to Commando Memorial. I really want to go there. I have been there before, but I've really been sort of looking into the history of World War II and the stories of the men that gave their lives and the sacrifices that they gave. So my mere 2 miles walk is nothing, absolutely nothing to moan about. That small pilgrimage to see Commando Memorial is definitely worth it.
The Commando Memorial was opened in 1952 by the Queen Mother. Standing just over 5 metres in height, it commemorates the men of the 1st British Commando Unit, a unit that played a significant role in defeating Nazi Germany.
That was a long hike from the Great Glen to this spot, but this spot is definitely a place to come and just reflect of the men who trained in these hills, who gave their lives in the Second World War to free Europe. What incredible brave souls.
Although the statue was built to commemorate British commandos, it has become a symbol of pilgrimage to many military personnel from all over the world, as a symbol of commemorating fallen comrades. With the Commando Memorial behind me, there was still more history to be found, and how this area was connected to the men who served in World War II.
Well, I've arrived at the Cameron Clan Museum. It is a detour off the way, as all the interesting little side attractions are, but I budgeted for this, and I've actually got here a little bit too early. I think I was too enthusiastic to get outside in the rain. They're going to be opening up hopefully in about half an hour or so. So I've got a little bit of extra time to go and explore the surrounding area. The weather is still Scottish, but you know, it is what it is. So I'm going to make the most of the Clan Cameron Museum and the surrounding areas that were pinnacle in the World War II preparations for the newly formed commando units.
Urqurt Castle, home of the clan chief of the Camerons, played a key role in training World War II commandos. On the estate, commandos trained in small boats, which can still be found today, simulating attacks that were necessary to liberate Europe. The training was as realistic as you could probably ever get, using live ammunition, including bullets and shells, fired by instructors skilled in shooting to miss, but not by very much. The private museum connects the history of the Clan Cameron from the 14th century to the present day. In fact, the day I arrived, a family from Baltimore in the US, bearing the name of Cameron, had travelled to Scotland just to connect with their ancestral past. The museum is small, but it's jam-packed with stories from the past to the present, from the 1745 Jacobite uprising to its connections to the former British Prime Minister David Cameron and the Oscar-acclaimed director James Cameron. This includes historic reproductions of the Titanic's first-class crockery used in the film Titanic. The museum visited, I now headed back out in the rain.
I really enjoyed the museum. I really felt that it was the right thing to do. I know I'm making this film, but I also thought, you know, do I really want to walk another 2 or 3 miles there and back off the track? And I thought, no, Kevin, make that effort, go there, check it out, and just immerse myself more in the history of the area. And it was worth it. But now, the weather is still terrible. I'm making use of this little bird watching hut or whatever it might be. The plan is basically a long track through forest till I reach Laggan, some 6 miles north of here. Going to see how I go with time. I'm not doing too bad today. I guess when the weather is bad, it does allow for less filming, and of course that then speeds up my journey. When the sun is out, the drone comes out basically, and there's no drone flying today, that's for sure. So let's get back out in the rain and enjoy the 6 or 7 miles to Loch Laggan. No, not Loch Laggan. Yeah, Loch Laggan. Yeah, the Lochs of Laggan. My brain is soaking wet. The Lochs at Laggan.
Finally, the weather did improve and the drone came out just in time to reveal Loch Lochy. Covering 16 kilometres in length and up to 162 metres in depth, it was the first of 3 natural lochs that made the Caledonian Canal possible.
To the south of me is Loch Lochy, and just behind me is the recommencement of the Caledonian Canal, the canal that was physically dug by hand and engineered by Thomas Telford. Beyond that are 2 more lochs, and beyond that, in Inverness, is the North Sea. But I'm really happy to be here just for now. It's been a stunning day, terrible weather in the morning, stunning weather with blue sky in the evening.
At Laggan Lochs you have a choice of route, either towards the town of Inverlochy or along the shore of Loch Oich, and I chose the latter.
This is what I love about the Great Glen Way, these little quirky features that you have. And this tunnel is obviously part of the legacy with Inverlochy Station, just a few miles south. I just love it, especially when it's raining. I just had my lunch, but if I hadn't, this would have been a perfect place to shelter from the beautiful Scottish weather.
My route passed the historic bridge of Oich. The bridge was opened in 1854 and was used by traffic until 1932. It also marked the second of the natural lochs, Loch Oich.
This is Loch Oich. It's the second natural loch along my journey. But without it, the Caledonian Canal wouldn't have been possible. Thomas Telford knew that by using the natural resources of the land in the form of lochs were essential for him to complete his monumental journey. To put it simply, if the 3 lochs didn't exist, and this being one of them, the Caledonian Canal could have never ever been built.
I was now on the approach to Fort Augustus.
Now Loch Oich is behind me, I'm back by the Caledonian Canal, and I still just can't believe that this canal was dug out with the brute force of men. No mechanical diggers, obviously then. But one big misconception about the canal is that it was built by Irish navvies, Irish labourers, specialising in digging navigation canals, hence the name navvies. And that's true, they did play a massive part in constructing the canal, but also they used local labourers, local men from the highlands who had actually been pushed off their land because of the highland clearances to make way for sheep farming. And these men also massively contributed to the construction of their canal, of the Highlands Canal. So it wasn't just the toil of the Irish navvies. It was in fact Scottish hands that also dug the canal. And when you think about it, every lump of clay, mud and rock had been physically removed by the toil of a shovel and a pick. They were true hard-working men.
I was now reaching the halfway point of Fort Augustus. Time to do some battery charging and some recharging of me. Fort Augustus was renamed in the 18th century after the Jacobite Rising of 1517. Again, General Wade, like he did in Fort William, built a fort here. However, in the 21st century, the only invasion Fort Augustus faces is the invasion of thousands of day trippers. If you're doing away, you will be drawn into some of the numerous cafes and shops, but a place that's definitely worth a visit is the Caledonian Canal Centre.
It is cram-packed with little bite-sized bits of information about the statistics to make the Caledonian Canal. It really is worth a little detour. You can also, as I did, have a couple of cheeky coffees, and also I did have a veggie breakfast as well, which was so I've had 2 breakfasts today. But it's been really worth it coming in here and just getting an insight into the sheer grit and determination that the men had to build the Caledonian Canal. Well, that was a real welcome stop in Fort Augustus, but I must confess I was glad to leave in the end. It was getting a little bit too busy, a little bit victim of its own success, many tourists, and I can only imagine in the summer months it must get rammed packed. But nonetheless, it was a good stop, and my plan is now just to head up this public road and rejoin the high altitude path to head north towards Drumnadrochit, but that is probably tomorrow's destination.
With Fort Augustus well behind me, it was time over the coming days to shift my thoughts on the natural forces that shaped and created the Great Glen geological divide.
This is a really important section for walkers, and the reason for that is because it gives us the opportunity to walk high, take the high route as well as the lower routes behind me. And why is that important? It's because we are no longer walking along the towpath constructed by Thomas Telford. We're pretty much done with his amazing work until we reach Inverness. But why is the high route so interesting? Well, that's because it will give us views of Loch Ness, and Loch Ness needs no introduction. Apologies for the lack of stunning cinematography here. There are limits to what you can do on an action cam on a day like this, but this is my first proper view of Loch Ness. I really do need a drone on this, but as you can appreciate, it's wet and quite windy, but nonetheless that is Loch Ness. There's just something about it, isn't it? You could probably travel the world and say the word Loch Ness and people would probably know what you're talking about. There isn't probably so many lakes in the world where you can actually do that. An entire legend built around a body of inland water. I wish I could film it properly, but I can't. I'm trying my best. Perhaps tomorrow the sun will come out and we'll get the stunning views and do it justice, eh? Let's give that a go later.
As the weather deteriorated and the day drew to a close, I was looking for somewhere to camp, but this was becoming problematic.
Any bits of relatively flat land are not flat at all. It's that foot deep tufty grass with heather, gorse and fern, bracken and a few blackberry brambles, good measure. So it's getting on till nearly 6 o'clock. Light does not last that long so far north in October. This could get interesting. There is absolutely nowhere to camp.
Eventually I did find something, but it wasn't exactly ideal.
The world of someone making films for YouTube is exceptionally glamorous. This is my accommodation for the night. It's in basically a gully with leaves. I think you can see it's getting really dark, but it'll do. It's a little bit wet, a bit muddy, but there is water and there's plenty of places to find a toilet in the morning, which is always useful. It is by far from ideal, but as you can see, I'm losing light and beggars can't be choosers. So this will do, We'll make the most of it. Adaptability is the key when doing anything in the hills, and well, this is kind of the hills, I've come down, but adaptability. So I'm going to put this tent up very quickly before I lose my light, and at least you know I survived, which I'm sure you're all extremely excited about. So good, put the tent up. In my little hobbit hole, it's very damp, but I don't care. This is part of living an adventure, isn't it? You know, I'm not one for B&Bs and hotels, and I respect people that do it like that, but I do prefer to immerse myself into the environment as much as I can, and if that means camping in a very wet, damp tent, then so be it, because I just love it. Anyway, I'm gonna have my dinner and tuck into my another Norwegian delicacy, real pulmat. I'm gonna tuck into that. Yeah, it's been a good old day. Shame I couldn't see Ben Nevis, but Ben Nevis? What am I talking about? Loch Ness. Oh my god, the wetness has got to my wee head. No, shame we couldn't see Loch Ness. But tomorrow will be a sunny, bright day. I can feel it. We'll get the drone out and we'll have some stunning views over Loch Ness. Until then, I can have my dinner.
After a very damp night, I headed towards the bridge of Invermoriston. The modern bridge was constructed in 1933 to take the demands of the main road. But the original was built in 1813 and again is part of Thomas Telford's legacy. The weather remained sunny as I headed out of Invermoriston.
I cannot complain. Blue sky. You just know that it isn't going to last. But I'm even down to my t-shirt. I'm letting my my jacket dry out a bit. Stunning. And what an important part of the Great Glen Way. It's another one of those high-low, low-load scenarios. And what I like about these signs is they are jam-packed with information, and it gives you basically the differences between the two, the highlights. And then it's up to you to decide what works for you. I was toying with the idea last night in my tent just to simply take the lower route, because obviously if the clouds are grey and there's rain and blah blah blah, you can't see anything. What's the point of treading the high route? But with weather like this, I am fingers crossed, toes crossed, that the high route will pay dividends and the drone shall fly over Loch Ness. What a stunning, stunning day. And what's really funny was yesterday I was having this line in my head about when I reached this point, because this monument, this statue is called the Viewcatcher, and I had this whole spiel to camera where I was going to say, yeah, well, today the Viewcatcher has been turned off, which is why you can't see anything. Well, obviously today they've turned it on.
The Viewcatcher has definitely become a poignant landmark on the Great Glen Way and has symbolised our appreciation for our natural landscape. With the sightseeing done, I still wanted to explore the geology of the Great Glen when something stopped me in my tracks.
Now I know this looks a little bit strange, but I just had to stop and have a look, because everything else that we've walked on so far has been man-made. The towpaths, even the paths up the hills. But this rock is very, very different. And as a keen geologist, it immediately struck out. And what created it was ice. Its smoothness is like nothing else.
The rock was smooth. It had been sandpapered by ice, a byproduct of multiple glaciers that shaped this landscape through various ice ages. As I headed north, the geologist in me was getting more curious, and I was looking for a break in the weather to explore that story.
This is, I'll take my hat off. This is absolutely stunning. You could almost see a rainbow being born from this amazing play of light, cloud, water and rain.
The Great Glen Fault is known as a strike-slip fault, or in simple terms, it's when tectonic plates slide against each other. Northern Scotland was on the huge continent of Laurentia, and southern Scotland and England were on Gondwana. And as these tectonic plates inched closer together, they collided in a catastrophic collision event, and that created the British Isles that we know of today. In a period known as the Caledonian orogeny, when huge mountain systems were formed.
And however I show it to you, it's just not going to cut the mustard, is it? Eh? It really isn't. It is just really, the atmospherics are insane. And I'm not going to capture it on an action camera. Oh, even the drone would have problems even doing it slightly justice. It's just incredible seeing Loch Ness. This sort of, it's almost like a canal in itself.
This combined with multiple ice ages that covered Scotland, where glaciers have carved out the land, making the Great Glen Fault being visible from space. It really is a line on a map, and inspired the name of this film.
Just absolutely nature awe-inspiring, and everything all mixed up together in one word. Just amazing.
A story that is over 500 million years in the making.
I can't tell you how beautiful this path is. It really is stunning, but it's actually quite cold. It's the first time I've got what I call my my cameraman gloves on, because obviously you compress your buttons and your touch screens and all that stuff. And I was just thinking a while ago, you know, throughout my career, worked with the BBC, worked with National Geographic, Discovery and other channels as well, and doing this kind of adventure stuff, wildlife stuff, and I kind of think back to the amount of people we had working on it. You know, if this was a professional gig, I was thinking, you know, what kind of people would we have on a journey like this? I mean, there's the question, would we even do the journey, or would we pretend that we're doing the journey and actually leapfrog many sections by car? But I was thinking, you know, we'd have a presenter, someone who's obviously delivering the content to camera, and they would obviously be on board with the script. You'd have the director, who's checking everything, checking the facts, checking that we've got the correct sound bites, checking that everything links to the next thing, and that we've got the coverage necessary. Then of course you've got the camera operator, the cameraman, camera woman, same thing. And they'd be obviously checking that they've got, again, the coverage and the cutaways and the wide shots and the close-ups and all that stuff. And then you'd have a sound man. And obviously, well, that's obvious what they do, but obviously sound is a key part of any kind of programming. And then you'd have generally like a researcher or an assistant producer who'd be basically doing everything for everyone else. And then of course back base, we'd have researchers, we'd have assistant producers, more producers, serious producers, all doing the research, all doing the planning, all doing the logistics. And then we'd go into post-production, which would probably take about 6 weeks. You'd have obviously an editor with the director, a colorist who's doing the color grade, and a sound designer, plus music, plus everything else that might go with it. So real credit to us YouTubers that just go out there with literally, you know, an SLR, or a DSLR camera, a couple of action cameras, a little drone, doesn't matter, some people, with just a phone, whatever you've got. And we go out there and we create content because we love it and we want to share it and we enjoy it. And that's the spirit of content creation. It's not about having teams of people. It's just about having the energy and the passion to get out there and document the world and try to make everything a better place by sharing knowledge and sharing understanding, and that's all we can do. So if you can subscribe to my channel, it would really mean a lot, because as YouTubers we need subscribers. It doesn't cost anything, but it means the world to us if you can subscribe. My little wee chat has just ended in the most beautiful of beautiful spots. What a good way to end this little piece. I was just looking at my map from Ordnance Survey. Ordnance Survey is the mapping system for the British Isles, and I noticed marked on the map was a symbol for a fort. Now I've had a look around me on this little mound and the mound just behind me. There's nothing obvious to the untrained eye, but I know that this whole area was very common for usage by the Picts, a group of clans that lived up in this region, and also the Iron Age. In the Iron Age they built lots of settlements, lots of forts, and some of them are called vitrified, where the rocks have sealed together. No one is exactly quite sure how they did this in the Iron Age, and it created a whole bunch of conspiracy theory, from aliens to solar flares. But it's just fascinating to know that this area was once settled by our ancestors. And if you hadn't taken the time to look on the map, you would literally have walked past it. It's what I love about taking that extra time to explore. Now, just incidentally, if you are interested in Iron Age forts, and if you're interested in the West Highland Way, also on my channel is a separate film about a famous vitrified fort that's actually on the West Highland Way just before Fort William. That is a separate film on my channel, so check that one out, and there you can get a sense of scale and appreciation of what our ancestors had built. But nonetheless, just being here on a site where there once were people living and hopefully thriving, but definitely existing on our landscape, is a fascinating asset to the Great Glen Way.
The Dundee film on my channel is one of my favourite micro-adventures. And if you're curious, there is a link at the end of this film which will take you to it. I do love history, and on the Great Glen Way there is an absolute must, Urqurt Castle, and it's one of Scotland's finest. The castle was built from the 13th to the 16th century, but was laid to ruin by the English government in 1692 to prevent the castle falling into the hands of the Jacobites, the political group opposed to English rule.
I'm so pleased that I've taken the time to come off route to Urqurt Castle. I know that it's a 3-mile return trip on foot back to Dromnadrochit to recapture the Great Glen Way, but if you're going to come this far, if you really want to experience, I'd say, the highlight of the Great Glen Way, it has to be this castle. You just feel a real essence and spirit of Loch Ness.
Probably one reason why the castle is so popular and iconic is its location. Perched high on a rocky outcrop of land overlooking Loch Ness. Hollywood couldn't have written a better location. Loch Ness doesn't need a monster. It is its own beast, approaching 40 kilometres in length and with a staggering depth of nearly 230 metres. It's more like an inland sea rather than a loch, the Scottish word for lake, with a harsh environment and water that never gets above 5 degrees Celsius even in summer, Loch Ness has earned itself its own lifeboat station. Shaped by the ice and positioned by the Great Glen geological fault, and home to one of the world's greatest enigmas, Nessie. With a great night's sleep behind me at a local campsite, I headed to the hub of the Loch Ness monster.
I'm at the north end of Drum na Droche, and thankfully it's a Sunday morning and the thousands of Nessie hunters in their coaches have not arrived yet, so it's nice and peaceful. But normally this place is full, especially in the summer months, of visitors from all over the world looking for those elusive humps on Loch Ness so they can become a social media star overnight with the exclusive, conclusive photograph of the Loch Ness monster. I wonder if that will be me later on the trail. Haha, I somewhat doubt it. But I'm soon going to be leaving Loch Ness as I'm going to carry on along the Great Glen Way. The trail veers off. So I've only got probably another 2 or 3 hours alongside the banks of Loch Ness to hopefully catch that elusive photograph of the Loch Ness monster. Don't know why I'm doing a Dracula voice. Anyway, enjoy.
Per dollar invested in marketing and infrastructure, Nessie draws in more income than any other tourist attraction in the world. But I was glad to get on with the rest of the trail.
This is the last official view of Loch Ness from the Great Glen Way. It means that from now on I kind of start heading inland to follow the path towards Inverness. I must admit, when I first started this journey, I thought the Great Glen Way would be a lot easier than I expected. But these last few days, the Great Glen Way has been a challenge, and I've loved it. I love the mixture of the flatness of the towpaths along the canal and the climbs through the forests as we reach the end of Loch Ness. The Great Glen Way is a diverse national trail, despite what some people might say about it. This isn't a closing statement, although it does sound a little bit like it. I've still got quite a journey to go. But I just want to say that the Great Glen Way deserves the word great in its title, because it really is one of Scotland's great national trails. I'm absolutely loving this this highland plateau. I'm not quite sure of the ecological name of this landscape. Just can't get it out, but I love it. There's lichen, there's heather, there's gorse. It's almost like its own microhabitat. I wasn't expecting this. It feels remote. That's the way to describe it. It feels remote and special.
I was now entering the Urqurt forest, a forest looked after by its local community. But some hand-painted signs on the trail were gaining my curiosity.
It says open 365 days a year. It could have a sick joke and be closed today. This is really curious. This is well documented on the Great Glen Way. This campsite slash cafe slash I have no idea what to expect, so I'm really looking forward to this. And it's been a long day, and I wonder what food they have in the cafe that's open 365 days a year. This is so weird. This is the weirdest campsite cafe I've ever stayed at in my life, and my work has taken me to a lot of countries, but this is bizarre. Come in. So this is the restaurant. Okay, I've already ordered, and the lady will bring it down. And let me see if it's not too dark. And then I haven't been in here yet, and I think this is the dining area. This is with prayer flags, and if I was with someone, I could have a romantic dinner. I'm really blown for words, actually. It's in the best possible way, with the absolute greatest respect. It's a little bit like that film Blair Witch, but with lovely people. My host Sandra is a lovely lady. Shall I use the word eccentric? I shall. I love it. I love it how people can literally eke out a living from this little wee place in the woods, in a world of rules and regulations and health and safety and hygiene standards. These places have disappeared, certainly in Europe. Reminds me a little bit of places I've eaten in northern India. What a great place. This is, sorry, I really am taken back, because we're just so not used to seeing this anymore. We're just so not used to seeing it. Sorry, the battery just died on my action cam, so I'm just using my iPhone. This is just the absolute best soup. It's beautiful. I'll tell you what, forget all this Great Glen Way, walking lark. Just come to this place. Just stay here for 2 weeks. It is brilliant.
I left early that morning, and I made the most of my last day on the Great Glen Way.
I guess something I haven't actually mentioned is what I'm really enjoying and taking time to read are these blue signs that you find along the way. They've been with me since leaving Fort William, and this one is talking about cattle droving. Of course, cattle have always been and still are to be a big business around the world, none more so in Scotland, and many of the roads and paths and tracks that many of the great trails in Scotland utilise were roads used for cattle droving. A bygone era, as so many things are, but nonetheless these little information signs really do add just that little bit more value, so you can discover a little bit more about the land you're walking through. And it's definitely worth taking that couple of extra minutes just to have a quick read.
I was now on the home run. My time on the trail was coming to an end when my final destination came into sight.
And that's Inverness in the distance.
From first seeing the town of Inverness stretching out in front of you to actually entering the city itself does take a couple of hours. And you know, it's only a matter of time to realise what you have achieved before it becomes a memory. But in those final stages, Thomas Telford was still leaving his mark.
This is the Caledonian Canal. It feels like I'm revisiting an old friend as it creeps towards the centre of Inverness and inevitably out into the North Sea. It really feels like my journey is coming to an end.
As you cross the bridge onto Ness Island and follow the River Ness, your end goal is now in sight. And as I looked back, as my adventure grew to an end, I learnt more than ever the benefits of taking the time to explore what was around me. This walk had so much to offer for those that just had a little bit of time to stop and look. For me, I love so much creating content for YouTube. I think it has given me the reason to ask why and explore the world around me, with so many more YouTube adventures to come.
This is the end of the Great Glen Way. Oh my God, I am really pleased to be here. That journey into Inverness is like it never ever ends, but it is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed the Great Glen Way, and I really hope that you have enjoyed my film. It does take a considerable amount of energy making films like this, especially when you're filming yourself, as you can imagine. So if you can give my film a like, and really if you can subscribe, that means a lot to us YouTubers. We need subscribers to grow our channel, because this is the start of my YouTube journey and I want to take you on so many more adventures and show you so many different things on my YouTube channel. So if you can subscribe, it really would mean a lot. But just concluding, this is an awesome journey, an awesome walk, and I hope that it has inspired you to perhaps one day undertake it yourself. But if you are going to undertake it yourself, I hope my film has been of value, and some of the history and some of the places and some of the things we've seen have inspired you to get out there and enjoy the Scottish and the hills of the world.